Hello and good evening. Welcome to another edition of your Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Tonight, as always, we're coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'll be your host tonight, Rob Fawcett, and looking forward to discussing the latest news on and off the field before previewing Dundee United's visit to Ibrox with my guest. But before I introduce them, I want you encouraged to visit the Gersnet website. Not only do we have our main website with a host of quality articles and online museum, but it also hosts our popular forums, which are a great place to keep up to date with the latest news and discussion. We're live tonight on YouTube, and we'd ask that you continue to spread the word amongst your friends and family, share the pod on social media, and more importantly, subscribe to the channel. But don't forget to stop by the website so that you can join in the forums and discussion there too. Now, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They've also got a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, you can email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest for this evening, Stewart Weir. Feels like deja vu. The last time we were on this pod together, it was after an international break. How you doing, Stuart?
And as one former Rangers captain says, this feels like deja vu again. We didn't have time to explain to him exactly what deja vu meant, but no, you're right. Maybe I can't say it's after the Lord Mayor's show or anything like that. It's probably just the warm up act of what happens this weekend. And maybe a chance to forget internationals, which I think everybody does after a while.
No, I mean, I didn't even watch any of the football over the international break, to be honest. So I think the only thing I saw was somebody posted in our bus chat the clip of Souttar's assist for Robertson and saying, can he take free kicks instead of Tav? So maybe we might have that as some of the discussion later on, Stuart.
I was thinking that this was the second coming of Alan Hansen, by the way people were going on about him. It's maybe not quite. I haven't quite seen him in that light. But I was having not a debate, but somebody was telling me how good Souttar is, and I started asking various questions. Is he as good as Marvin Andrews? And when somebody gets stumped answering that one, you know that they're basically just believing their own hype.
I think we're just like the song goes, holding out for a hero, and I think anybody would do it at the moment, mate. To be honest, so anybody that kind of gives us the slightest positivity, we're going to latch onto them. But you know, we'll probably cover a wee bit of that as we go through the agenda. But I guess the first thing is typical fashion in international break. There's a wee bit of news off the field, and obviously Neil Coppin being announced as the new technical director of Rangers. But the one thing that kind of noticed that I noticed was actually how wide his remit was going to be. But the thing for me about this is actually the decision making process on how we've come to this, because for me, it comes back to the lack of joined-up thinking that we've seen time and time again for the club. You know, we don't have a chairman, we've not got a chief exec, but we've gone ahead and appointed somebody into the director of role, or the technical director of the football club. Surely, you know, appointing somebody in such a critical position for the club is going to need to have buy-in from the hierarchy above them. You know, whether that's the CEO, or the chairman. Is this us just doomed for disaster, or am I being too negative against you?
There's a bit of this. Quite a few years back, at New Year, when only an excuse was on, we all giggled heartily at the sketch where you had the Rangers board basically walking around the table, and when the music stopped, they had to grab a chair, and the one that was left became chairman. And I do wonder if that's going on a daily basis just now, whereas you're today's decision maker. It all falls on you. First of all, to find a technical director, and tomorrow it'll be somebody needs to find a CEO, and then the next day somebody will need to find, you know, a wee woman to make the lunches or something like that. You know, I don't know. I think I speak for a great many people who have reached a stage where they can only be bemused by what's going on. You've nobody in senior positions, yet you're making decisions like this. And, I'm half expecting for them to find out that the sort of plate on the door will actually be hurriedly changed where it says Neil Coppin, technical director. It'll be director will be scored out, and it'll be trying to put in brackets technical drawing. You know what I mean? They've probably appointed somebody who's actually not qualified for that particular role. His promotion seems to be quite meteoric, but you find this, down through history, lost causes like the Third Reich, for instance, when they were desperate, anybody could get promoted. And I think just now you look at Rangers and there are announcements being made, and folk are just shrugging their shoulders as if to say, right, okay, where does this fit? You mentioned his remit there. When you read through his remit, this is something akin to a plate spinner being asked to basically spin mitre size 5 balls on the end of canes. Because when all of a sudden one or two of them are just going to drop off, you cannot have the focus of the first team and the first team squad and the recruitment and the backup to that through the academy setup and all the rest of it, and worrying about youth football or women's football or anything else, because you're going to let some of the plates actually drop and not only fall on the floor but probably smash. And again, I can almost hear somebody saying another disastrous season for Rangers, and suddenly it'd been but we've won the Women's League and we've got an under-13s team into the Isle of Man tournament, and the boys polish boots better than any other boys out there. You suddenly may end up laying claim to titles that don't necessarily mean anything. And if there is a time for Emery to come into this job where he is going to be under scrutiny from day one, in fact, I would say, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, I would say he was actually under scrutiny before he got the job. And as much as people were looking at him and saying, I hope he doesn't get the job, and lo and behold, he does. So he's got a huge remit, but even, I would say, an even bigger weight of expectation placed upon him now as well.
I think you're right. I mean, the remit was something that caught my attention, to be honest, when I saw it, because he's now got responsibility, as you say, for the academy, the medical department, the football operations, the performance and the analysis departments. Now, if you just look at what he's doing at the moment from a transfer point of view, getting that right in January is absolutely critical for the success of the club. That's a full-time job in itself. And in his interview, he kind of alluded to the fact that he's got good people there, but they still need direction, and they still need somebody to have that relationship with the manager to deliver exactly what we need on that front. But the other side of it that he's taken on, which I'm assuming they must have merged into the one role, is that head of academy. That's important for the future success at Rangers. And if you don't have somebody focusing 100% entirely on that job to kind of revamp the B team, and I'll touch on some of the stuff that you mentioned there, that's not going to get us in a position where we want to have this player trading model we keep going on about, because we'll never develop anybody that's good enough for the first team, which isn't going to help us, become successful again as a club. And to me, it just smacks of short-term decision-making in a bit of a panic without any long-term strategy in place, because we don't know who's running the ship.
You mentioned the medical side of things. Is he suddenly going to read a book from Marcus Welby, MD, and know what all these different ailments and injuries are, or is he just going to go in and some morning and go, right, what's the score? Because every time I come in here, we're now running out of beds and couches to put casualties on. This isn't right. We've got too many injuries. What is the script here? Just touching briefly on that. an international window. It must be the only time where Rangers actually end up finding players injured who aren't on international duty. I mean, that. I mean, go to Dubai, but don't break anything. So it's again, I can see his job being one, being difficult, but two, I can just hear and see the excuses that will be made if it doesn't come off because he was too busy doing something that he shouldn't have actually been doing.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. I mean, I think for me, the CEO, the chairman are the critical positions, and then you bring a director of football type person in that's gonna align to where they're driving the club to. Ultimately we've kind of done what we always seem to do. We've filled the position, with a bit of a knee jerk reaction, and it's it could be a disaster before it's even begun.
Is it the horse before the cart, or the chicken before the egg, or the chicken before the cart? That's more what it's like at Ibrox just now. We've got a horse and an egg. What do we do here? Listen, it's where Rangers are at just now. But I always think in this position, you don't start making appointments from the bottom going up the way. You look for somebody at the top to make the decisions, and everything filters down from them, because ultimately they're the one that puts their name against everything. And if it sort of goes slightly wayward or slightly wrong, it's the guy at top that's going to be answerable to so many people. And again, you don't want to leave, with all due respect, you don't want to leave somebody like that with an excuse saying, well, they put all these people in place and I didn't want any of them. If you look at some of the interviews that have been kicking around over a number of months, I mean, you look at this week, here's Michael Beale making another excuse. Why did you not do these things or say these things or try and amend these things whilst they were actually in situ? Why did it suddenly become too much for you? And you suddenly decide, but if I'd been allowed to do this, you should have been jumping up and down and kicking doors in, saying, this is what I need to do. But you didn't. Why? Maybe because you were quite enjoying what you were getting paid every fortnight.
In hindsight's a wonderful thing in these situations. They can rewrite history a little bit by throwing out a couple of lines and trying to appease fans that way. But I think the majority was beginning to see through that, because we've seen it time and time again. I guess maybe trying to move things a little bit more positively. One thing that I did pick up in his interview, which I was quite pleased to hear them at least acknowledge, was the fact that the B team setup isn't really doing the players justice or the club justice. I think he spoke about the disappointment, the output from the academy, but also the fact that they want to try and get players involved with the first team at a much younger age. I think for me that sounds like a really positive thing. If we can get more young players exposure to what the first team squad are kind of training and performing, the setup that they're going to be playing, it should make that transition easier. I guess could the appointment of Coppin in that regard be a bit of a fresh start for the academy, with some of the ideas and I guess some of the stuff that he's seen coming from the likes of PSV and stuff? Yeah,
it could be, but I'm still waiting for the youngsters in the youth from 2013 to get their chance. Remember when Rangers were playing in the fourth tier of Scottish football, that was a big opportunity then to bring through all these youngsters. We've got so many youngsters. Forget having one team. We've got enough youngsters to have 3 teams. That's the future for Rangers. How many have actually come through and done anything anywhere? And I think that tells you the age-old problem. One of the problems that has continued to blight anything that Rangers have done, I won't say off the pitch because obviously you're playing on the pitch, but the whole management of that setup has cost a fortune with not too much in reward. I know people will point to Patterson. I know people will point to Gilmore and these boys coming through. But this was supposed to be a factory where Rangers were creating teams, not just individuals that they were then going to punt on almost immediately. because the net effect of that is you punt them on, you get 10 million quid in the bank. What do you do with it? You go and piss it up against the wall by giving some lunatic the role of recruitment director or manager or identifying talent, and you end up with absolutely nothing.
I think the interesting comment from as well was talking about working with other clubs, and you've actually just sparked my memory, because I think was it Ross McCormick that was on Clyde One, I think, talking about his time sitting on the bench and how he preferred to do that because he got win bonuses rather than go out and play football. And I think that type of thing encourages players to get lazy, because they see the pound signs, and if they don't have that drive and hunger to go and play, they will be happy probably just to sit and make up a match day squad. And I think the comparison for me at the moment is looking at Bailey Rice, regardless of whether we think he's good enough or not, but he's not really been given the opportunity to showcase that. And if you look at him and Miller, all we hear is that Bailey Rice, at the time we signed him, was the better player. And you look at the way that Miller's career has gone, and I firmly believe that is because he's been given game time and he's been playing against men. And the way that the B team's structured at the moment, we don't play competitive football. It's meaningless friendlies. Are they really going to learn that much by it? This is where the kind of Highland Lowland League thing that we were involved in, at least they were playing against men, and you got used to that physical side of things, which is where I think sometimes we lack in our youngsters, and they never make it into the squad. But they've also got to want it. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have historically, actually, Rob, some teams get it right with what they do with their youth teams and their youth players. You go back through history, and there was a time where Rangers signed players from junior clubs and then let them go back to the juniors because they weren't quite ready for them. And by the time they finished, they were ready. Why? Because guys targeted them and basically decided, "Oh, you're a Rangers player now. Here, have some of this," and it toughened some of the players up. And I think it's something. It's not just game time, and I'll agree with you there. It's not just game time. It's a context in which you're playing those matches. If it's just game time, play against each other. Mm-hmm. You don't learn anything from that, other than the guy who's actually quite good is better than you, and you've got a lot to learn. So it's a difficult balancing act or juggling act. But over the years, there has to be somebody at some academy somewhere who has got half an idea of how to run these things. And the fact that Rangers recruitment, even in that front, has been lacking, tells you a hell of a lot.
I know, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And the last thing I'll touch on with Coppin's interview before we go into the press conferences in the Dundee United game was just something that he'd mentioned around having more people in the club with Rangers as part of their DNA. So for me, I thought that was actually quite a positive comment. I've seen various reactions to that about no wanting ex-players in just for the sake of it. But I think for me...
Like mine, posting up a picture of Joey Barton. Good luck.
Aye. But I guess it's more, we do really miss people like Walter and Jimmy Bell in the club, people that were steeped in the DNA and the history of what Rangers meant to people. They were the people that reminded the players in the club, the standards that you've got to uphold, the honour that they've had by representing us as a club. And I think it's something that we are missing a little bit in there, because the standards have slipped a little bit, and we almost seem conditioned as a squad to accept second place at the moment, which is just unacceptable. I think if we're going to look to bring in more people with that Rangers DNA, who would you like to see come into the club? Or is this something that we as fans just overstate? Do we make a big deal of it when it's not actually important?
I think it might surprise some people the net effect of folk that would have an influence in that front. It's not always your star player. Do you know what I mean? There are people out there who have the makings of maybe being a decent coach who don't get a chance to coach. But what they do is maybe get a chance to coach, if you like, life skills or professionalism. And, I always thought it very interesting being in and around Rangers at the time, that when Dick Advocaat came in and basically brought his Dutch entourage with him, the guy that he constantly tapped into was John Gregg.
Yeah.
And you know, John Gregg was an amazing player for Rangers. Also won trophies as a manager, let's not forget, and gave Rangers some decent European runs along the way. But ultimately wasn't successful enough when actually he was playing against another three teams who could win the league, rather than just the one. But when it came to the kind of history and why you did things in a certain way and why you looked a certain way and how you dressed a certain way and all that kind of thing, Advocaat, used John Gregg as a sounding board for so many things. I think sometimes the replies that he got or the answers he got sort of left Mr. Advocaat somewhat surprised, because I think Greggy gave him, not quite both barrels, but basically asked him, "What are you asking that for, son? Didn't you can?" Right. But it was also, that was an interesting sort of relationship or dynamic, and it shows it can work. It doesn't necessarily need to be front and center of all operations and what you're doing, but just somebody there that knows what the script is and know what has gone before. The sad thing is with Rangers, all the people who knew what has gone before are not really there. The ones that have been left by somebody else and just not cleared out yet.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I was looking at it, I think having Stephen Davis back would be a really good addition to the coaching staff. He's got it. He's done it as a player at the highest level. One of the most capped international players in the world. Won trophies for the club, but you can see he is a proper Rangers man, and I think that would be a good addition. He obviously wants to do his badges, but you do have others like Kevin Thompson, who's been pretty well involved with the youth setup and has been trying to cut his teeth in management. There are others like Barry Ferguson who are still involved with the club that again, are proven winners and know the standards of Rangers. So for me, I think having a smattering of those type of people in and around the club to remind the players that are coming here, this is what it's about. This is what you play for, and this is why you've got to put that effort in when you're on the pitch, because these fans in the stand don't accept anything less. And if you give them 100%, they'll love you for it. But if you give them anything less, by the way, you're going to be in for a fucking tough ride.
Yeah, and also sort of what it takes to be a winner, but also, once you've won, that's just not enough. You then got to kick on from that. Fine dangling your championship badge and your cup winner's badge. See if you've only got one of them, you're like so many other players.
Mm-hmm. Aye, exactly. And have a bit of bloody arrogance again. I want us to be like looking ahead at a game of Dundee United and talk about taking 4 or 5 off them.
I was thinking a bit more about actually, given that Storm Bert was in the way through. I was thinking maybe that Rangers losing 4-0, the game being called off in the 87th minute, and Dundee United fans not getting any money back.
I remember that one, mate. That would be quite good.
Or am I just being malicious there? I sincerely hope so.
Absolutely, mate. So press conferences. I think that the first thing that jumped out to me was obviously the Castle Weir news that it looks like it's a bit of a long-term injury, and that he's going to have to go in to see a surgeon. But I think I actually really liked what I saw from Castle Weir when he came into the first team. Whether he was playing at centre half or one of the full-back positions, he looked really comfortable on the ball. I know he wasn't a nailed-on starter, but I definitely think there was potential there. He was strong, comfortable with the ball. When he was playing in that full-back position, liked to get up and support play. Obviously, we've got an option to buy on him, and depending on the price. Do you think that's going to be worth the risk of a permanent move if he can prove his fitness after the injury?
Hold on, I'll just let you through my filing. I filed him in here under Sebastian, Seb Rosenthal and Oleg Kuznetsov. He's in here, and the next drawer is Daniel Prodan. So
it's just
they're in there. He's in there just now. I might move him at a later date depending on his progress. But excuse me if I say I've seen this movie before. This boy looks good. Watch out for him coming along again in a year's time, because that's how long it'll take to get him fit. Listen, I don't disagree with you. I think you're right in what you said there, and it's a shame that this has happened to him. Once again, I go back to this seems to happen quite a lot at Ibrox with a number of players, and I do hope he makes a full recovery and at least is in the debate as to whether they make him a full-time signing after seeing him a bit more. It'll be a journey back for him, and I hope I hope it's a speedy journey actually, just to see actually what he's like. But wouldn't you just know it? That little spark of life. I wouldn't say a green shoot, maybe a blue shoot of some sort of recovery, and all of a sudden he's no longer in the picture for a number of months.
It's such a shame, and typical. We always seem to have these bloody problems with players, don't we? So it's so.
I think I found another one down in here. Oh no, not the pressure anymore.
It was Jordan Rossiter. We're back in 2 to 3 days or something like that, wasn't it? 2 to 3 games, we'll see.
Aye.
I think the other thing that came across during the presser was a lot of focus, obviously, on both performances and results, and I think the manager spoke about the need for us to be more consistent, stop letting teams back into the games, yada 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 yada. For me, it just got a bit like Groundhog Day, hearing the same old time after again. You could probably play a presser for the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks where it's been consistently the same message. But I guess who bears most of the responsibility for the lack of performances that we're seeing at the moment? Is it players? Is it manager? Is it a combination of both? Or
we're back to the horse before the egg here, right?
I'm looking for you to give me some positivity, Stuart. Come on.
Wrong place, pal. Wrong place. It's you got a bit of realism, maybe if you're lucky. Listen, I think you see the frustration coming through with the manager at times when things happen, because he obviously has in his mind's eye has a way that how Rangers might actually win a game, but I think he's also got it in his head. This is how we might lose this, and consistently being a goal ahead or a couple of goals ahead or whatever it is, Rangers suddenly find themselves a man down or losing an equaliser, whatever it might be. And I think he can honestly see this in advance. I'm not saying he's reading tea leaves or got a crystal ball. I think now that he's watched Rangers long enough and it's his team, he is becoming decidedly frustrated by that. Now, it's his job to impart the knowledge into those players that makes sure to make sure these things do not happen. So whether he's doing that proper or not, I'm not sure. But it's also the players' responsibility. They must know that if you do this, it's like sticking a fork in a plug. I might get a bit of a shock here if I do this often enough. And Rangers don't seem to learn. Sticking a fork in a plug, sticking your tongue in a fan, wondering, I don't mean a fan, I mean an electrical fan. But yes, let's just tidy that one up before we go any further. But you see what I mean? It's like what the risks are to doing certain things, but you persist in doing them. And even if it's something as basic as just switching off, not concentrating, not doing your job, taking time out to shout at somebody when actually inwardly you should be shouting at yourself for something happening. We've seen that with too many players and continue to see it with too many players. And, you asked me the question, who's responsible? I have to say, ultimately, it has to go down to the players, because players decide whether you like it or not. A player decides, or a group of players decide whether they want to play for a manager, or whether they want to play for the team, or whether they want to play for themselves. And that's all down to what a player does. The manager doesn't have any influence on how those players play collectively if they've got that mindset, or how he influences individuals to play in a certain way. I go back to John Gregg and Davy Cooper. Davy Cooper, when he wanted to play, he could beat anybody. When he didn't want to play, didn't matter how many people he had telling him, saying, "Come on, this is a big game." It didn't matter. It was all up there in terms of a player, and I think that still continues to this day. If a player really wants to do it for you and he switches on, the net effect maybe of, say, somebody like Suter getting these headlines and how well he's played for Scotland, he might come back with a bit of added confidence. Equally, he might come back thinking, "Oh my God, people have noticed me. I better not make a mistake." Now, you guess what's going to happen.
Oh, exactly. We're going to see the soapy Suter that does make a mistake, and then everything will be bad. And
aye, forget that Alan Hansen comparison.
It'll be more Anton Rogan,
but more John Hansen in the Desert Song.
And that brings us to the next point in the presser, because obviously it's come up quite a bit over the last week, where we've seen sources link along with the Belgian job, and I think for me it was actually quite high. It was actually
right across the country's social media. That was a react.
Aye, exactly. Although it was quickly followed by most fans saying, "Oh well, we can get compensation and get rid of him. That's pretty good." And I think, his response, he's obviously fully committed to Rangers at the moment, but I think it's clear from that reaction, he's got a massive job at the moment to win the fan base round. One way he's getting performances and results right on the pitch, but it seems that the large majority of the fan base are kind of almost finished for them just now. So how's he going to recover for that?
No, I think you're right. I get that. I've had that feeling for weeks. In fact, maybe even months. Go back to I would actually stretch that all the way back to Rangers winning back-to-back games and going top of the league with a 2-point advantage. And that didn't happen. And I think he saw, and the big neon signs above the head going with a big question mark, wondering if this guy was actually up to it. And ever since then, it's been stop-start, hit or a miss, performance, good performance, great performance, then a performance that was, you wouldn't scrape, or you might scrape it off your shoe. And I think the whole sort of demeanour of the manager at times, he looks as if he's a guy who is not just struggling, he's almost drowning. When the fans start to voice their opinion, the whole thing about the fan base at Rangers, with so many of them. Listen, you were the guys that wanted rid of Giovanni Van Bronckhorst after he taken you to a European final and won the Scottish Cup. You didn't fancy him. So if that's your starting point of no fancying somebody, you're not going to give anybody else a chance.
Absolutely. And I think hindsight's always a wonderful thing in it, because you can look back on previous managers' performances and start to then, see some of the stuff around not being backed, etc. But I think the fans probably didn't quite expect how big a rebuild we were going to have to do with the amount of players that we were losing and the downsizing that's happened at the club. The fact that we've had to trim the wage bill quite significantly, and we've not really had a sellable asset there to be able to reinvest in the squad. And I guess this is where the off-field stuff comes into it as well, Stuart, because we've kind of almost been rudderless for the last year, without any strong type of direction at all from the board.
I'll just go back to Van Bronckhorst momentarily when you just mentioned that there. Van Bronckhorst takes Rangers to a European final. Who, for me, was the star performer for Rangers that season? I would say Bassey. There was a guy. There was a guy who I could almost see being, in Rangers terms, the next Richard Gough. He had stature, he had presence. He could play the game. No coincidence that he ends up being signed by Ajax. None whatsoever. That was all done in terms of ability and what he'd shown the previous year. Whether things pan out from that, who can say? But maybe if he'd actually hung around for another season or another season and a bit, Rangers might have doubled their money again on him. And also, they might have had somebody there that everybody identified as a captain that was worth following, rather than one that you were ready to draw your service revolver and blow his brains out the next time he did something wrong.
No, that is a fair point as well, mate, on that. And I think, interestingly, more of that money could have been reinvested in the squad as well at that point if we'd made a big sale like that. You're looking at the players we were linked with under before Van Bronckhorst left. I think if we'd have got 2 or 3 of those ones in, you're talking about probably a different style of football and a much better quality team that we would have had at that point. So there are always sliding doors moments for managers, and I think the one thing that's been clear is
the one thing for Rangers manager is a sliding door moment. Your head gets caught in it, and then the lift goes up.
But the last thing I wanted to touch on in the pressers before we go into the Dundee United game, it was Tierney. Obviously, he was the player put up this week, but actually, I think he's actually grown into being quite an important player for us. He's now a joint top league goal scorer with only 4 goals at the moment. As Leon miss aside, I think he's actually shown that he's a pretty decent player. And he was asked about staying on after the loan, and he said he was open to talking about it. But what's been your view on his start to life at Rangers? Do you think he's becoming a bit more of an important player for us?
I think I said, actually, maybe the last time I was speaking to you about Tierney, that I thought there was maybe a player there, but he didn't seem to be shrugging off the shackles. And all of a sudden he's come on to a game where the biggest shackle, or the land anchor, as I would call him, Tavernier, hasn't been around as much. I think there's a correlation between Tierney producing performances and Tavernier not being there. Whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, I don't know. But I think Tierney actually plays better when he's the lone man in that area, and not having somebody running into him or bumping into him or running past him or whatever it is. He has the responsibility of doing everything in that role. And I think he's actually, he's taken that on board. I think he knows what he has to do in that position. I think he knows as well that it's difficult for you to try anything when the guy who's actually covering their back is 20 yards in front of you.
You've not got that safety net. You lose the ball and immediately you're back in danger. So I get that, and it's almost a beautiful segue into looking at the starting 11 for the game tomorrow.
Good job with the rehearsal at 5 o'clock, wasn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Exactly. That's the professionals that we are. I think obviously sometimes the team is a bit like picking names out of a hat and see what the starting lineup's going to be. But I'd love to see the Barron and Raskin duo continuing in midfield, because I think they've looked really, really solid. I'd love to see Sterling play at right back, given Castleweir's not going to be fit. Just to give us a bit more on that right hand side, and like you say, free Tierney up a wee bit. And if we could, it'd be great to see Bajrami playing in the middle, more of his natural position. What do you think we're going to see? And do you think we might see a wee surprise being pulled out, like Hadji coming back into the team?
To answer your final question first, no. I think Clement is one of these guys who is desperate to have a settled team, who is desperate to be able to identify and put round pegs in round holes. and having been comparatively successful in other matches by doing certain things, he thinks he can do that again, and he might, So if he tries something, regardless of the performance, regardless of individuals, regardless of how disjointed they might look, if they win 1-0, he's cracked it, at least for another week. And I think that's what you do see. Nice to see the youth policy with Balogun probably went at centre back again. It was I don't what age is he now, 43 or something like that. But anyway,
age is just a number, Stuart.
Exactly. I keep telling myself that every time I look in the mirror. And I think they're limited to certain players. I think if you look at the Rangers first team squad just now, I don't think you've got any more than 15 players you could utilise.
Mm-hmm.
I might somebody online will come in with, but 4 or 5 names, probably 2 of them who left the club 3 years ago. But tell me how wrong you are. But there is nobody, I would say, who's breaking down the manager's door or kicking their way into that team to show people this is how you do it. And you end up with guys who've been tried and tested and haven't done very much, suddenly get working their way around back into the fame because the guy that replaced them hasn't been very good. And I think there's too much of that as well. So I think once you get past those 14, 15, 16 players, maybe, you're struggling then to identify anybody that might come in and make a big play for a jersey and to keep his place. Hence the reason why the Rangers team, even though at times they just look as if they get through the motions, still are the easiest team to put down on paper and the easiest team to pick.
Absolutely, and I think it brings us on to where we are as well, because I think last time we spoke, I think we were both upset about the performances, but at least we'd won 5 games and only lost 1 that previous kind of schedule up until that last international break. Our form, the previous one hasn't been anywhere near as good. We've lost to both bloody Killie and Aberdeen away. We've had 2 decent results in Europe. We beat Motherwell to get into the League Cup final.
So just mention Aberdeen. Not happy at the Aberdeen team bus going round Wraith Interchange and getting through a red light earlier on this evening. All right.
Right, okay.
I know red might be your favourite colour, but you do not go through red lights. It means stop. I don't care how big your bus is.
We're obviously
from Wraith Interchange.
That was it. We're obviously 9 points behind both of them, both Aberdeen and Celtic, which is just, for me, massively unacceptable at the stage of the season that we're at. Is this simply about making sure that we win the cups now and get a bit more of an extended run in Europe, hopefully strengthen in January and prepare for next season? Or do you think
Rob, I don't like your defeatist attitude here. We're still in November and we've got December to come. This is when Rangers are going to come good. You've obviously not been listening. This is when this new look Rangers side that's still playing 9 players that were playing last season, this is when they're going to come good. So come on, G yourself up. Believe.
Excellent.
Believe.
No problems, Marv.
I have seen the light, but it's I think you've reached the stage now where Rangers are if they were 9 points behind one team, it would be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
9 points behind 2 teams is nigh impossible because there is no way that I can see it panning out over the rest of the season where both of these teams are going to stay neck and neck. I don't see that. But I cannot see both of them conceding 9 points between now and the end of the season. So right away, you're almost trying to make good with where you're at just now. And remember, we are still in November. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing I would say is, yeah, you could maybe pull in one of the teams, probably Aberdeen. I just don't see it happening with Celtic, because again, they go into January, they suddenly need, oh, we need a couple of midfield players, we need this, we need that. We'll bring one in loan, we'll bring one in to sign him next season, sort of type thing. Are Rangers in a position to do that? I don't really think so. So you've got to make do and mend with what you've got and try and get some results put together. I just think it's too big a gap. The other thing is, if that gap increases with one or two teams, how hard then is Clermont jumping in the trapdoor? Because this whole thing, oh, there's still Europe to play for, oh, there's still cups to play for, and all the rest of it. The big test, a colossal test, is the League Cup final. And what happens there? If you go into that either having lost a league match, or you come out of that having lost a league match, and things go wrong for you in that final, you're looking for another manager in January, not more players.
I think you're right. I think there's also a turning point there as well, and I think I've mentioned this on a previous pod, that you win the cup final and you beat them at Ibrox, then all of a sudden it puts a different perspective on things. So, we can only hope that that we are on point.
Means you sell more strips in the shop for Christmas. Maybe even a couple of more calendars, a couple of advent calendars with your wee chocolate sweeties in the back there that taste like nothing else on earth. It's all there for you. Two results, and you're showing a profit already.
Brilliant. Performances and player performances in particular. Who do you think needs to put in a big performance against United tomorrow? Obviously, depending on who you think's going to start, but who do you want to see step up to the plate and at least try and give us a bit of hope, Stuart?
For the 28th time in succession, I would say Dessers, simply because, I mean, the goalie scored before the international break, when he actually took his time and placed it. You're thinking, that's what you're supposed to be doing. See, you can do it when you try. The next shot, suddenly we had an astronaut in the International Space Station picking up, saying, what the fuck's this? It just landed next to us, right? He is so inconsistent, he's become almost like consistently funny. Not what you want from a Rangers striker. And, you go into every game hoping that he'll produce something, but knowing at the end of it, he'll just produce what he's previously produced. And that is a position that needs to be, a situation that needs to be resolved. And you know something, Rob? The only way you resolve that situation is for him to actually score goals. Right. No anything else. Forget this. Oh, he plays well when he's back to goal. Huh? That's like you could play the ball up to some old dear with a Zimmer, and it would hold the ball up for you. It's not an exact science in the first place. It's not something that's measurable. It's not something that's going to win you matches. Scoring goals wins you games. And again, until such times as he does that, he'll probably score 5 games in the spin. Rangers will decide, oh, we really need to keep this guy because he's hit a bit of form, and then not score again until April the 47th.
I was going to say, we'll probably give him a $5,000 pay increase as well. That probably just to keep him and extend his contract for another year.
Just in case Belgium come in for him.
Absolutely. Focusing on our opponents for a wee minute. It's interesting because they're obviously sitting just behind us in 4th position at the moment. They kind of had a mixed run of 2 wins, 2 defeats and a draw, and their kind of set of fixtures between international breaks. What kind of game are you expecting for them tomorrow? Obviously, there's a bit of extra motivation that they could effectively draw level with us if they beat us. Do you think they'll come and have a go, or do you think it's going to be the usual from an away team at Ibrox? They'll sit back, they'll just soak up the pressure, and they'll waste time as usual.
If ever they were going to have a go, now is a good time to have a go, isn't it? They must be sitting saying, this Rangers team are there for the taking. I honestly think every team in that league would fancy their chances. Something, and that's not because teams think they're better than Rangers. That's because teams fancy themselves because they know how easy it is to play against Rangers. That if you put Rangers under any pressure, they will fold, they will make mistakes, they will give away goals. If you were going into a game and you had a back four or back five that had conceded one goal in the last 11 games, you would be thinking that way. Rangers just now, they've conceded goals when you least expect it. I mean, it will show you they've only conceded 8 goals, but it's when they've conceded those goals. It's not as if they conceded 8 in the one match and everything else has been great. It's goals that have been significant. They've lost them points. It's dropped them points. They've missed out and wins have been beaten by goals that should never have occurred. And I think Dundee United will arrive at Ibrox thinking that this is a good time to actually have a go at Rangers. Because the other thing is that whilst you're up against a Rangers team, you can affect so much damage in that team just by having a go and having the fans turn on the team, because the fans are ready to turn on the team in an instant if things don't go their way. So this is not a bad time for any team to come at Ibrox, dare I say it. And again, it's another match where Rangers really need to show a bit of their mettle here and produce a performance, and one where they actually look as if they're playing as a team. There's a bit of cohesion there and a bit of steel about them, rather than just waiting for the first goal to go in and fold after that. Whether they score it first or dare I say Dundee United score it first.
And that brings us to score predictions then. What are you thinking?
Every week, I'll take 1-0. You know me, I am so easily pleased. I was never always this easily pleased, but Rangers winning 1-0 would paper over the cracks, cover a multitude of sins, but it'd be 3 points, and meaning that at least Clement wouldn't need to change his script for the following week. He could just say the same thing again, and it reminds me of how he dresses outside the club and we go away with his missus and tours the country, going different places. But the granddad in The Simpsons, when he walks through the door and he takes off his hat, he puts his hat up, he walks around in a circle, he takes his hat, just walks out the door. That's what it's like.
And on that bombshell, that's a great way to end, Stuart, because it feels a bit like a fucking press conference. I'm hoping somebody's good at the old photoshopping and we'll get a meme with Clement's face on that.
Nobody had it first.
Exactly. Hopefully Frankie's not going to shout at me too much for going a wee bit over time, but a big thank you to my guest this evening, Stuart. It was brilliant to chat with you. Really appreciate your time this evening, pal.
Thanks again.
As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms. That's iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, etc. Coming up this Sunday on your big flagship show, we're going to have Scott Bradley as your host. He's going to be joined by Alec and Ross, and they'll all be reviewing a win over Dundee United quite comfortably by 3-0, I'll predict. All that's left for me to say is a massive thank you to all those watching live on YouTube and those to you listening again. Have a great weekend, folks, and bye for now.